Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. The applause hadn't even stopped echoing when I realized she wasn't wearing her ring. That was the first thing. Not the smile she gave the guy beside her. Not the way she leaned in during his whisper. Not even the champagne glass she never used to touch. It was the missing ring. From where I stood, just off stage behind the curtains of the Grand Crest ballroom, I could see her clearly. Her hand, weightless. Her left finger, bare. And for some reason, that tiny detail hit harder than any betrayal I'd ever imagined. They had just called her name. Emmeline Greer, Strategic Excellence Award for Global Vision. A mouthful. I clapped. I smiled. I watched her glide past me like I was just a fixture in the background. I was used to it by now, being her +1 with no name tag. But what I wasn't ready for was what she said once she stepped off the stage. Someone, I still don't know who, asked her how long we'd been married, and she laughed loudly, like someone had told her the punchline of the decade. Oh, Daryl, that was a youthful mistake. I married him when I still believed in love songs and coupons. Don't worry, I'm evolving. The words punched the air out of my lungs. People chuckled. One of the women actually sipped her wine and said, "We've all got one of those." I stood there holding a handwritten letter in my pocket. One I wrote months ago, but never had the courage to give her. I was going to hand it to her tonight, at dinner, over dessert. Not anymore, because something shifted in me the second I heard her say those words. Something small but irreversible. And what happened next wasn't planned. Not exactly. But I didn't stop it either. The night was just beginning, and by the time it ended, her award would still shine. But her life wouldn't. She didn't see me when I slipped out the side exit. Too many people were circling her now, offering congratulations, compliments, empty flattery disguised as admiration. I stood just outside the ballroom, still clutching the envelope I'd brought in my inner coat pocket. It was creased now, almost damp with the sweat from my hand. It wasn't a love letter. It wasn't some grand declaration. It was a goodbye. I had written it months ago on a Tuesday night, when she didn't come home until past midnight. She said it was strategy week at work and that it was expected. I believed her. Even when she came in smelling like a perfume she never wore. Even when she avoided eye contact and went straight to shower. I had tucked the letter into a drawer the next morning and tried to forget I ever wrote it. But tonight, I brought it with me. Not to give it to her, but to remind myself I wasn't crazy. Back inside, they were taking group photos. I could see through the double doors as she stood beside her boss, a tall man with silver hair and hands that hovered too close to her waist. She didn't move them away. She leaned in. Her smile looked different. Not forced, not formal. It was the kind she used to give me before everything became performative. I knew I should leave, but I didn't. I stood there like a ghost, watching my own life parade by with hors d'oeuvres and string quartet music. Eventually, I walked back in, not to join her, not to smile for the camera, but to place the envelope exactly where I knew she'd find it. At our assigned table, I slid it under her engraved name card. Then I sat down. Not a single person noticed. Minutes later, Emmeline returned and paused when she saw me. She looked confused, almost annoyed, but she didn't say anything. She just sat. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, smiled slightly, then stood up again. "I need to take this," she said, and walked away without waiting for a response. She never asked about the envelope, not yet. But the man she texted? I'd already seen his name light up her screen earlier. And what I did next, I didn't do it out of revenge. I did it because after 10 years, I finally realized she'd already left me. She just forgot to tell me. I don't know why I followed her. Maybe I was hoping I'd misunderstood it all, that the missing ring was an accident, that the cruel joke was just poor humor, that the message I saw flash on her phone, "Can't wait to leave this boring thing," wasn't about me. But deep down, I knew. There's a certain silence in a marriage that doesn't lie. It grows slowly between the little things. The dinner she didn't touch. The kisses that moved from lips to cheek. The "I'm just tired" that meant more than it said. I slipped out behind her, trailing her heels down the hallway, lined with gold-framed paintings of fake landscapes. She thought she was alone, which made what I heard even worse. She didn't even try to whisper. "Yes, I'll come straight there. He's here, but he won't notice. He never does." She laughed after that. A low, almost pitying laugh. And the voice on the other end, a man calm and rehearsed, told her, "You've done enough pretending. You don't owe him anything anymore. That was it. No hesitation, no guilt. She ended the call and adjusted her dress in the hallway mirror, like she hadn't just gutted the man standing 15 feet behind her. I ducked into a side corridor before she turned. My heart felt like it was being crushed by something invisible and stupid. Like the 10 years I gave her were nothing more than a placeholder until her real life began. When I returned to the ballroom, I sat in silence. People danced, clinked glasses, celebrated things that probably didn't matter. Her name was still glowing on the giant screen above the stage, but all I could see was the chair she left empty. I didn't leave yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone. I opened her contact, and for the first time in years, I scrolled to voicemail settings. That's when I remembered something she once said 2 years ago when we switched phones. Don't set up voicemail. It's outdated. No one calls anymore. I hadn't thought much of it then. But now it made perfect sense. She never wanted a trail. She never wanted to be found out. So I made a decision. One that would leave no screaming, no slamming doors, just facts. Because if she was evolving, then I was about to introduce her to the man she thought she'd buried under a pile of to-do lists and birthday dinners. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling while she slipped in sometime after 1 a.m., thinking I was asleep. She moved carefully, heels off, hair pinned up, her scent a mix of some musky cologne I didn't recognize, and a hint of champagne. She didn't say a word, neither did I. We'd become experts at pretending the silence meant nothing. The next morning, she smiled like nothing happened. She even kissed the top of my head while pouring coffee, like some mechanical gesture from a memory she didn't feel anymore. "Don't forget we have dinner with the Jafferts tonight," she said, tossing her gym bag over her shoulder. Her tone was light, friendly, cruel somehow, in its normalcy. Then she was gone. I didn't go to work. I sat with that envelope from the gala still folded on the kitchen table. She hadn't mentioned it. Maybe she never read it. Maybe she tossed it, unread, like the other parts of me she no longer saw. I stared at my phone until I convinced myself I wasn't crazy. Then I did something that made my palms sweat before I even finished typing. I called the hotel concierge. I gave him the date, the time. I said I was confirming a reservation for Mr. and Mrs. Adler, a name she used once when she thought she was being clever while booking a staycation for a supposed solo weekend. And there it was, a suite, booked, 2 nights. Under the name I just guessed, confirmed with the number she once used for her backup email. My voice cracked when I thanked him. I hung up before I could say anything else. It felt like proof, but instead of relief, I felt nauseous. I wasn't the suspicious type. I was the benefit of the doubt type, the maybe she's just stressed type. I was the guy who let red flags become wallpaper. But now I had a room number, a reservation, and a name that wasn't mine. I didn't tell anyone, not my brother, not my best friend. Not even the barista at the cafe where I sat for 4 hours pretending to read a novel I hadn't touched in months. I just waited. I waited for Friday, because on Friday she said she had a late strategy meeting, and on Friday she was going to meet Adler. But this time, so was I. Friday came like a funeral. Everything I did that morning felt mechanical, brushing my teeth, putting on socks, locking the door. I couldn't taste my breakfast. I couldn't even remember if I had one. I drove in silence, no music, no talk radio, just the sound of tires and thoughts louder than they had any right to be. The hotel was only 15 minutes from our house. 15 minutes, a whole second life blooming quietly in the shadow of our own. I parked in the underground garage and sat there for 20 minutes, watching people come and go through the revolving doors. I rehearsed a dozen versions of what I'd say if I saw them together. Why him? Why lie? What did I do wrong? But every version made me feel smaller, more pathetic. So I let the questions stay where they belonged, in my throat. When I finally stepped inside, the lobby smelled of lavender and leather. The front desk agent gave me a polished smile. I didn't speak to her. I knew exactly where I was going. I had memorized the elevator layout from the hotel's website earlier that morning. I had even practiced my stride, confident but not rushed, like I was supposed to be there. Room 714, top floor, private balcony, lake view. That's what the concierge had told me. I reached the door and stood in front of it for a long time. I didn't knock. I didn't kick it in. I just listened. Nothing, not laughter, not footsteps. Silence. I considered walking away, but I couldn't. So I reached into my coat and took out the backup hotel key card I'd requested under my wife's maiden name the night before. It worked. God help me, it worked. Inside, everything was staged. Robes on the bed, 2 wine glasses by the window, her suitcase open near the armchair, a pair of heels tossed lazily beside it. She wasn't there yet. Neither was he. But their presence lingered. Their plans were waiting to unfold. And so was I. I didn't ransack the place. I didn't destroy anything. I sat down at the writing desk, took out my phone, and started recording. Not to post, not to ruin her, just to remember the moment I stopped being invisible. By the time the door handle turned, I wasn't angry. I was ready. The lock clicked like thunder in my chest. I didn't move. I stayed seated, hands folded on my lap, like I was waiting for a meeting I never wanted to attend. She came in first, alone. Wearing a blue coat she only ever wore on trips that didn't include me. Her hair was pulled back like she was trying to look professional, but her eyes were too bright, like someone about to start something thrilling and reckless. She froze the moment she saw me. No gasp, no scream, just that look, guilt crashing into calculation. Her mouth opened slightly like she was choosing between 10 different lies. I didn't give her the chance. "I used the backup card," I said, "the one you didn't think I'd remember." Still, she said nothing. She put her bag down slowly, like she was handling glass. "Who is he?" I asked, even though I already knew. Her mouth tightened. "Daryl, don't... No. Just answer." Her eyes shifted to the bed, then to the window. "Anywhere but me. He's just someone I talk to. It's not... Look, I didn't plan this to hurt you." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. "You planned it enough to book a room, Emmeline. You planned it enough to lie to my face for months." Her voice got sharper. "Because you stopped being present, Daryl. You're always just there. Quiet. Small. Like wallpaper." There it was. The real reason. The buried truth. I had become too ordinary to be loved. Not bad. Not abusive. Just ignorable. I stood up and handed her a small envelope. The same one from the gala. "You never opened this," I said. She took it slowly and unfolded the letter with shaky hands. Her eyes moved fast over the words, and I watched her breath hitch halfway through. I had written that I still loved her, that I saw her pulling away, that I didn't know how to fix us, but I wanted to try if she did too. She didn't speak when she finished reading, just lowered it onto the desk like it burned. Then the door opened again, and he walked in. He was taller than I expected, confident, polished. A crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled perfectly, like he'd practiced it. His tie was still in his hand when he stepped into the room and stopped short, eyes flicking from Emmeline to me like he'd walked into the wrong scene. But he didn't look surprised, no panic, no guilt, just annoyed. "This wasn't part of the plan," he said flatly like I was a logistical hiccup. Emmeline swallowed hard. "Charles..." "No," I said, holding up my hand. "Let him speak. I'd like to hear how he justifies sleeping with someone else's wife." Charles tilted his head like I was being unreasonable. "You two have been over for a while, haven't you? You just didn't say it out loud. I let that hang in the air." Emmeline turned her face away, eyes glossy but not crying. That stung more than if she'd screamed. She didn't even have the energy to fake sadness. She was already gone. I nodded slowly. "So that's it. I'm a placeholder, a warm body that made coffee and took out trash. A souvenir from her 20s. Daryl," she finally said, "this wasn't supposed to happen like this." I smiled, tired, aching, not angry. It rarely does. Then I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. "No, I didn't record anything," I said, before she could accuse me. "I'm not here to ruin you. You've done enough of that on your own." I turned to Charles. "She made vows. Promises. Maybe they don't mean anything to you, but I buried pieces of myself into this marriage for 10 years. I lost friends for her, passed on job opportunities. I changed who I was, and you," I pointed at him, "you walked in halfway through the story and decided the ending." Charles looked bored now. "Are we done here?" I almost laughed. "Yeah, we are." I turned to Emmeline one last time. "I was never the one who disappeared. You just stopped seeing me, and then I walked out. No yelling, no threats. Just the quiet tap of my shoes on the marble hallway floor. But what she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was what I had already put in motion before coming there. Because while they were planning a weekend together, I had planned something else, something final. By the time Emmeline checked her phone again, she would have found my message. The lease transfer is complete. The house is no longer ours. While she spent the weekend with Charles, I spent mine packing. I didn't scream or burn her things. I labeled boxes, folded photos, and dropped my keys at the lawyer's office. Quiet, boring Daryl, cleaning up the mess while everyone else lived loud. But I didn't walk away empty. See, months ago, when her distance turned from cold to cruel, I started writing. At first it was just journaling, painful half-thoughts at midnight. But eventually, it became something more. I sent a few of those pieces to a small literary blog, then more. Then a publisher reached out, asking if I had more stories like The Man in the Room Who Wasn't Seen. Apparently I did. I never told Emmeline. She wouldn't have cared. But I'd signed a deal 2 weeks before the gala. Enough for a new apartment. Enough to breathe. Enough to start over without asking anyone's permission. When she returned home Sunday evening, expecting the same furniture, the same husband who'd wait in silence, she found an empty house. Just one suitcase waiting near the front door. Hers. And taped to it a note that simply read, "This time, I disappeared first. I didn't vanish. I rebuilt." 3 months later, I read aloud one of those stories in a small bookstore in Vermont. There was no audience of hundreds, just 9 people and a young couple holding hands in the back. And I felt seen for the first time in years. I wasn't the mistake. I was the one who finally stopped pretending he didn't matter. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. This was Reddit Confessions. Now, we want to hear from you. Comment below and tell us. What's a moment in your life, or in history, where someone's quiet decision changed everything? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your stories. We're here for all of them. Until next time.